Hello everyone, this is Kenshin. Welcome to History Talk. Please move your fingers to subscribe, click on the favorite message to share. Also please open the little bell, thank you. Today's History Talk is the 10 Notorious Arms Dealers. As you may recall, before Russia's invasion of Ukraine began in 2022, WNBA star Greiner was sentenced to 9 years in prison for drug possession and smuggling for bringing a marijuana cartridge into Russia, and in early November 2022 lost his appeal and was sent to a remote exile to serve his sentence. The U.S. government insisted it was an illegal arrest and offered to trade Russian arms smuggler Bout for Greiner's freedom, but Russia made no further moves until November 11, when it accepted the offer. But on December 8, the two sides finally reached an agreement. Originally sentenced to 25 years in prison, known as the Merchant of Death of the Russian arms dealer Viktor Bout, Bout was able to leave the Marion, Illinois, the small Guantanamo nicknamed the Federal Penitentiary, and return to Russia, of course, and the Russian military intelligence has a close relationship with the Russian Military Intelligence Department for fear that he would leak too much information to allow Russia to replace the prisoner in a hurry. We all know that the arms industry is a truly global industry. As long as there is money to be made, there will always be corrupt or criminal elements who want to take advantage of the market to make money. They travel all over the world trafficking and distributing weapons to make a lot of money and try to stay one step ahead of the authorities and their business competitors. This brings Kenshin to the top 10 most infamous arms dealers in modern history, all of whom can be called merchants of death. Let's get to know these evils who only know money and treat human lives as if they were nothing. 10th place, Adnan Khashoggi. In addition to being a very successful Saudi Arabian businessman, he is also a very prominent arms dealer. The American-educated 76-year-old, who was the world's richest man in the 1980s, began his career in the arms trade as early as the 1960s, brokering deals between U.S. companies and the Saudi government. One of his most famous clients, Lockheed, now Lockheed Martin, paid him $100.6 million in commissions in the early 1970s, and of course, he used to hide his financial dealings by setting up nominee companies in tax havens like Switzerland. Arrested in 1988 along with Imelda Marcos, widow of exiled Philippine President Ferdinand, in the Irangate scandal, but acquitted 2 years later, he now lives in Monaco. 9th, Dale Stoffel. He was active in Iraq's post-war reconstruction efforts, known for smoking cigars and often carrying a machine gun, a popular image we know as the mercenary. 2003 saw his company, Wyoke Technology, sign its first contracts with the newly formed Iraqi Ministry of Defense, and ultimately with the fledgling Iraqi government, with contracts worth a total of more than $40 million. A year before his death, the goateed man was outspoken in his criticism of irregularities in the way Iraqis paid for his efforts, and others like him, and in his allegations of rampant corruption. He was killed in 2004 on his way to Baghdad. Was owed $24.7 million shortly before his death. 8th, Musa bin Shamsur. He is a Bengali business tycoon known as a major player in the international arms trade and many other business ventures of the 1970s and 1980s. This high-profile figure is affectionately referred to as Prince Musa by the South Asian media, although he is also known for his dealings with other shadowy arms dealers on this list, such as Adnan Khashoggi. His Swiss bank account was reportedly frozen at $7 million for unusual transactions. His company, Datco, was founded in 1974 and specializes in global weaponry, including tanks, fighter jets and ballistic missiles. As well as the arms trade, he is known for his love of excess. 7th place, Samuel Cummings. Samuel Cummings was an American arms dealer and founder of the International Armament Corporation, a company that virtually monopolized the global private arms sales market, and was called the undisputed king of arms trade philosophers by the New York Times. Recruited as a weapons expert by the CIA in 1950, he traveled around Europe in the early 1950s and purchased large quantities of surplus weapons that had been on the black market during World War II, which enabled him to found an arms trading company that dominated the U.S. small arms market in the 1950s and 60s. Of course, he also expanded his business by dealing with a number of prominent international leaders, including communist Cuban leader Fidel Castro, who sold him a shipment of AR-10 rifles, but this also angered General Rafael Trujillo, the leader of the Dominican Republic, and Cummings died in 1998 at the age of 71 after a series of stroke symptoms. 6th place, Fairs Mana A. He is the most notorious local arms dealer in Yemen, and officially holds the position of governor of the northwestern Yemeni city of Sada. Despite this position, his more illegal activities were brought to the attention of the UN Security Council, which added his name to a list of businessmen accused of trading arms to the Somali rebels, an organization suspected of having ties to al-Qaeda. In addition to being accused of spying for the late Libyan leader Colonel Gaddafi in exchange for millions of dollars, he was appointed the new governor of Sada in March 2011 after fighting broke out between pro-government tribesmen and Manama-backed Houthi rebels, but has also been accused of supplying the latter with weapons. 5th place, Sarkis Saganalian. Born in 1929 and nicknamed the Merchant of Death, he rose to prominence during the Cold War and became a major arms dealer during major political conflicts. He is also notorious for being Saddam Hussein's most important arms dealer in the 1980s. However, with the full knowledge and support of the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, he sold weapons to Iraq during the Iran-Iraq War, to militia groups during the Lebanese Civil War, and to Ecuador and Nicaragua, as well as to Argentina during the Falklands War. After the First Gulf War in Iraq, his good fortune came to an end when he was sentenced to 6 years in prison for possessing weapons with the intention of selling them to Iraq, a sentence that was later reduced to 2 years, ending his life as an arms dealer on October 5, 2011. 4th place, Manzair al-Qasr. Syrian-born Manzair al-Qasr is known by the glamorous title of Prince of Mabara, but he is also a notorious international arms dealer. He began his career in the arms trade in the early 1970s when, according to his own account, he was asked by the Yemeni government to buy weapons for them from Poland. He lived in London from 1972 to 1984, but was later expelled by the British government on charges of arms and drug trafficking. He moved from London to Marbella, where he earned the nickname Prince of Marbella. Further arms dealing charges followed, including that he sold weapons to the hijackers of the Achille Lauro cruise ship and aided the assailants, making millions of dollars in profits by selling weapons to 3 countries, Croatia, Bosnia and Somalia, when the United Nations imposed arms embargoes on those countries. He was arrested and convicted in 2006 as a result of an elaborate DEA trap, and was arrested in Madrid in 2007 and extradited to the US a year later, where he is currently incarcerated. 3rd place, Jean-Bernard Lasnaud. When the French-born man was arrested in Switzerland in 2002, nearly 3 years of requests for his arrest by Argentine courts and Interpol ended. But despite this, and charges of arms smuggling and fraud by the European Court of Justice, he was surprisingly allowed to live quietly in South Florida for more than a decade. His arms business was to sell weapons from his mansion to anyone interested, China and Somalia being just 2 of the suspected buyers. By his own estimates, the Caribbean group of companies he controls sells between $1 and $2.5 million worth of weapons a year, including thousands of tons of Argentine weapons to Croatia and Ecuador between 1992 and 1995, and he even boasts of a website that helps him make the deals, which has led him into a complex web of corruption and scandal that may never come to light. The truth may never be known. 2nd place, Leonid Minin. Ukrainian-born and internationally notorious arms dealer, he was born in 1947 and moved to Israel in the 1970s. Later in the same period, he was arrested by the German authorities for using false identification and suspected art theft. Among his alleged clients were Liberian dictator Charles Taylor and the Revolutionary United Front organization operating in Sierra Leone. Minin traded in weapons thought to have been supplied by the Russian arms company Aviatrand, which was also involved in money laundering activities related to deposed Yugoslav President Slobodan Milosevic. In 2000, he was arrested by Italian authorities and sentenced to 2 years in prison for illegal arms dealing. If you recall, Nicolas Cage's role in the 2005 movie Lord of War was partly attributed to him, so can Alien, and then Victor Bout, the next in line for the top spot. Number 1, Victor Bout. The most notorious arms smuggler on this list, he was extradited from Thailand to the U.S. in 2010 after a 5-year DEA operation on charges of illegally arming the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, FARC, against U.S. forces. A jury found him guilty and speculated that he might receive a life sentence, which turned out to be 25 years. He reportedly made a lot of money in the 1990s and 2000s by transporting goods in Africa and the Middle East. The former Soviet military interpreter may have helped fuel civil wars in Africa by supplying large quantities of weapons, and was dubbed as Sanctions Buster in the 1990s in reference to allegations that he violated the UN arms embargoes with Angola, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and the Congo over a 10-year period. In 2001, he was suspected of smuggling gold and cash out of Afghanistan. But after a decade of rescue in Russia and finally catching enough of him for a prisoner exchange, he was finally able to return to Russia, but with the added benefit of avoiding disclosure of even more of Russia's unspeakable misdeeds. Back in the present day, Russian officials have continued to protest the treatment of Bout, 55, after he was arrested by the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, in Thailand in 2008, alleging that Bout was framed by the DEA. Bout's attorney in New York, Steve Zissou, warned in July 2022 that there will be no exchange of any Americans unless Bout is allowed to return home. But people familiar with the matter believe that Moscow's anger has less to do with the facts of the case than with his deep ties to Russian military intelligence. It's clear that he has important ties to Russian government circles, said Lee Wolosky, a National Security Council official during the Clinton administration who led the manhunt for him. If you like the program content, click on the subscription to share is the best support. If you have any advice, please leave a message, we will interact with you. See you in the next program.